I've noticed the longer I have a video idea for, the more like sort of nihilistic I become on the idea. And I just kind of go like, yeah, this idea sucks. I don't care about this idea at all. It doesn't matter anymore. So I'm trying to get right to this idea so I can have my most enthusiastic version of the idea. Yeah. So I'm kind of in a weird, like, complicated headspace right now. So I thought I would come up with a really simple idea of what, if anything, makes death bad, and all of the little intricacies and importances and unimportances in what death is. Yeah. So some like questionable bad in death is deprivation of experience, right? So you just lack anything. In an atheistic view, you would lack anything at all. It would just be nothingness. And arguably that can't be bad because it's nothing, right? And also in deprivation of experience, this is something that most adults ask for. So how could it be a bad thing, right? Where you go, oh, I've had a long day. All I want to do is turn off the lights and take a nap. And it's like, I mean, if you don't have a dream, you're literally asking for deprivation of experience. You're asking for absolutely nothing. So not necessarily a bad thing. And then the other thing is pain and death, right? But why is pain and death any worse than pain in life? Like, you could get shot in the foot and go through an excruciating amount of pain and not die and have to just live with that pain, or you could be taken away from your suffering if you so after you would feel that pain, you would just die, and all of that suffering would go away, as opposed to staying. So why would that be worse, right? And now from an atheist point of view, right, bliss in ignorance, right? So because there's nothing, you don't know anything, you don't have anything, so it would be bliss. And then from a theist view, sorry, I have notes. Heaven is greater than life on earth, and life in hell is hell. So death would be good if you go to heaven. Death would be bad if you go to hell. And now I like bringing in perspective on anything. So this could be like a purely perspective issue, right? You could go, well, if my life is really good here, then death is bad because it's the absence of the good that I felt in life. If my life here is very bad, then death being the lack of that bad life, would be a good thing. So the better your life is, the worse death is, and the worse your life is, the better death is. Okay, so what makes murder bad, right? It's the lack of choice, right? That's why we treat murder and suicide different, right? Is when somebody kills himself, you feel bad for them. When somebody is murdered, you also feel bad for them, but you are angry at the person who did it, but you're not angry at the person who committed suicide, for the most part. So what makes it bad is the lack of decision, right? So if you die of old age, or if you die of illness, the thing that's making that death even worse is that you have no choice in the matter at all. So arguably, I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, arguably the choosing to not live would be better than just dying of illness, which I guess is a view that a good amount of people have. And the act of me asking this question at all is an arguable reason that, like, David Bentar, his logic, right, of why birth is immoral, right? The fact that I even have to come with this qualm, have this thought process, which really sucks to kind of think about, but it's also kind of really interesting to think about at the same time. I don't know. It's messed up for someone to even have a child, because at some point they will have to fight with death, they will have to think about death, which is what we have to get into, I guess, is if it's bad or good. So I'm going to use a reductio ad absurdum, which is taking something to the farthest extent to learn if it is true or not, right? So we're going to start with, is death bad? If death is bad, then you should be doing everything in your power to stay alive for as long as possible, as one, right? Most people won't do that. Two, which means that most people don't believe that death is completely bad. Two is you wouldn't do anything that would get you even close to death, right? Nothing that would feel like death, nothing that would be poisoning oneself. So no inebriation, no like chance of death in like okay, right? So you wouldn't like ride a bull, you wouldn't do these like adventurous things that you could die while you do, because that would be toying around with death in the same way. And the reason why that's messed up in this situation, if we think that death is bad, is because you wouldn't toy around with a messed up issue like a crime, right? You wouldn't get very close to murder. You wouldn't get very close to assault. You know what I mean? You wouldn't toy around with that. It's a very serious issue, right? And we would see talking about death and toying with death as incredibly disrespectful then as a society, right? So which I guess we kind of do in a way, kind of. Like sometimes when you make a joke about death, people are like, oh, that's too far. But sometimes people laugh at it. So by taking it to the furthest extent, we now realize that death can't be fully bad, right? Because if you do believe that death is fully bad, then you would have to make sure that you are hitting all of those guidelines exactly. And then let's take, is death fully good, right? If death is fully good, you would end your life right now, right? Because if death is fully good, then you would want to reach that good as soon as possible, you would think, right? If you know in the other room there's something so wonderful, you're not just going to stay in this room for as long as you want. Like why would you do that? And because you haven't done so, then you can't believe that death is fully good, right? Okay, so now we've come to a weird crossroads, right? Death is now not good or bad, right? And if death isn't good or bad, what is it, right? So if death isn't something that we can't put any emotional value on, then death would be, as Camus would put it, I suppose, the absurd, right? As something that's not good or bad, it's something that would be also absurd to fear. As what other thing do we so fully fear that isn't good or bad, right? There's really nothing. Why would you fear something so deeply? Why would you stay up at night thinking about something so deeply that isn't good or bad? So it has to be this outlier. It has to be this absurd. Yeah, so as my final opinion is death cannot be anything, because death is nothing if you are an atheist. And if you are a theist or religious person, then death could be fully good if you go to heaven, or it could be fully bad if you go to hell. But yeah, I would say the more interesting view is the atheist view in this situation, where it's like death can't be anything because it is the lack of everything, which is nothing. But nothing, in almost any other situation, nothing can exist. So it's really hard to fathom that idea of nothingness, as we've never seen nothingness. We can't communicate with nothingness. We can't feel nothingness. We can't use any of our senses for nothingness. So death as an idea would be the closest that we could get to even imagining what? It's like the thoughts of a meteor floating through space. It is nothing. Yeah.